quite a lot of my fishing, particularly over the winter months, revolves around long whip fishing, be that on the River Wye or in Ireland in September. It's something that's really come back into fishing over the last few months, I think largely due to the sort of explosion of small fish in natural venues. There's been a real surge in numbers of fish, I think, in the natural venues across the UK and in Ireland. For nearly all my long whip fishing, I use the Sensas laser whips. They're 9 meters, really good quality, strong whips. They're perfect for when you're looking to catch really big bags of fish as quickly as possible. They never let you down. The most important thing, I think, really with whip fishing is your rhythm and speed. And it's all about just trying to get yourself into the position where you're catching the fish faster than you would if you were short lining. The whole purpose of a whip is to be as efficient as you can and to catch fish faster than the man next to you. And there's a few things that I'll show you now that I think have made a big difference to my whip fishing. We'll start actually with the top section of the whip. No different to a pole. You have a top kit on the Sensas laser whip as you would with a normal pole. It's a sort of put together section whip rather than your sort of standard telescopic whips. And a little thing that's made a huge difference for me actually is Dacron Connectors. I used to use a crow's foot. Now, when you're catching lots of fish, the last thing you want when you get yourself into a rhythm catching a fish a chub is to end up with the line actually looping back round the top of the whip. If you're fishing, say, 7-8 meters to hand, and all of a sudden you hook a good fish and the line's gone round the tip of the pole, the fish will bust you, or worse still, you'll spook the fish because it'll come off in the peg. Now, I started using Dacron Connectors, and actually I changed the Dacrons because what I found was that lots of the Dacrons on the market weren't actually long or stiff enough off the end of the pole. What I've got in there is an internal bush. Pretty much everybody now uses internal bushes, but that's an internal bush. The whip's been cut back, so it's quite a decent diameter internal bush. Then the actual Dacron itself, it's a yellow bead, as you can see there. I've got a really stiff, long Dacron off the end of the bead. The actual Dacron itself is probably 2.5 inches or more in length. Now, the reason that I've got this elongated Dacron is actually to make sure that when I'm fishing that whip at length, that the line is kicked off the end of the pole. It's almost like a sort of stiff boom on the end of the pole. That means that when you're fishing and you're catching lots of fish, there's absolutely no chance of that line kinking back round and wrapping round the tip of the pole. It's also at its worst when you've perhaps got a little bit of a downstream wind or a slight headwind. It's difficult enough fishing a long whip, and the last thing you want is that line coming back round the tip of your pole and ruining the chance of catching those extra few fish, perhaps because you bump them, you lose your rhythm, and it's just not good for the peg. So moving on from the actual tip section of the whip, we'll talk now about the rig and the elastics that I use when we're actually fishing these whips. So this is a sort of typical rig for me when I'm fishing on the Wye or in a Scarra Reservoir in Ireland. This is my sort of go-to rig for most sessions, and there's a few little tweaks that we'll talk about. So the hook length, generally 6 inches. You're not looking to lay a great deal of line on the deck when you're fishing a whip generally, because it's not very easy to control the rig. If the rig starts moving and you've got lots of line laid on the deck, you'll find that the float starts dragging under and its presentation is very difficult. So the hook length there is 6 inches. That's actually, I think, an 0.15 hook length on there. That's sort of typically what I'd start on the Wye. You can then go up or down depending on the sort of quality of the fishing that you're having on the day. The hook, and this is really important, is a 3065. I've talked about these before. It's a very long shank. It's quite a strong hook, but it's the long shank that makes it perfect for whip fishing. It's great when you're fishing at speed because you can get hold of the hook quickly, you can unhook the fish. You lose very few fish on this hook as well. It's a barbed hook, so obviously be a bit careful if you're fishing commercial venues, but the majority of the time you're fishing whips on natural venues, so it's perfect for me. Now, coming up from the hook length, it's 2 number 8 droppers. They're probably 3 inches apart. It's a good positive setup. 3 inches, 2 number 8s, and then hook to olivette is probably 16 to 18 inches there. Now, lots of people have gone away from olivettes now and have started using strings of quite big shot. I still prefer an olivette, but there's a little sort of difference with the way I set the olivette up when I'm fishing a whip and when I'm fishing a pole for lots of small fish in deep water. I actually have quite a big string of shot, top and bottom of the olivette. The reason that I have this string of shot, top and bottom, is actually to prevent the hook ever kinking above the olivette and tangling the rig on the way down. When you have this sort of boom created by the shot either side of the olivette, it's nearly impossible for the hook to actually get behind the olivette and cause a tangle. Another tip when you're looking at setting up is actually to hold the hook length, and if you put your hand on the loop, on the join, and then actually fold the hook back over the top, if the hook can't touch the olivette, there's very little chance of it tangling. If the olivette were lower, and as you turn the hook over, the hook can actually touch the olivette, you've got much more of a chance of the rig tangling. Generally, I like to try and hold the hook and then have the olivette at least 4 inches above that. It really does just reduce the chance of that hook ever getting caught above the olivette. So the main line's important as well. That's an 019. The venues that I'm fishing this rig on, you're looking to catch lots of fish. The fish aren't line shy, and this heavy line just keeps the rig nice and rigid in the water, and again lowers the chance of tangles. And then moving up the rig, it's probably one of my favourite floats. It's the Sensas Alberto. Again, it's a float that I've talked about before, but they're just perfect for this style of whip fishing. A very long float, it's probably 8-9 inches in length. It's in line, so the line goes right through the body of the float, and it's actually just stopped then by the rubber below the float. And what it means is that there's virtually nothing to actually go wrong on this float. You're never going to pull the side eye out. There's little actually on the float to break. It's a hollow plastic tip which is actually glued down onto the stem, so it's lovely and strong. But because the line's through the body, you also get the feeling that when you're striking into the fish, that you're actually striking through the rig itself. It's so direct, it's perfect when you're catching control of the rig on a river and just holding it back and easing it through. When the float goes, you're immediately into the fish. And that's something that I really love about these floats. I use them from 1 gram up to 4 grams on both natural and commercial fisheries. They're great actually if you've got a chop on and you're looking to fish sort of positive rig on a commercial fishery. It's not something that you've seen done very often, but they really are great for that. And then coming up to the top of the rig is the Dacron connector that I talked about at the start there, the sort of elongated Dacron. And then the elastic. There's lots of people seem to use really heavy elastics on whips. It's actually something that I've gone away from, and I've actually gone back now to using quite soft elastics, but then actually cutting the length of line down on the whip. So the line on the whip's probably 8 to 10 inches short. That's to allow the elastic to come out when you're swinging the fish to hand. But I've just found with a softer elastic, you lose less fish. And actually, if you hook a big fish, you've got more playing power. If you've got a really tight elastic, fish can run off and bump and snap the line. This is a yellow hollow, a Sensas yellow hollow. It's about 1.65 mil in diameter, and it's about a sort of 10 to 12 if you're sort of looking at elastic diameters now, about a 10 to 12. And that's just set sort of relatively pingy in the pole, but there's plenty of stretch. Perfect for dace, roach, but if you hook a big chub or perch, you'll get it in. So I hope those tips have helped, and next time you're looking to fish a long whip, perhaps bear some of them in mind, and it might put a few extra fish in your net. Thanks very much.